Hello, book lovers and English learners. Welcome to our January and February live read along. I'm Lydie Bureau. I'm an English teacher in France and also the founder of Lydie's Book Club, a book club for learners of English. In this book club, I host live readings and discussion workshops on adaptations of classics of literature and contemporary novels in their original text. I also tend to prioritize books that are written by women. Each month, we read and explore a different book for all levels of English. Each week, I host several reading sessions live on Instagram and Zoom for free. And to be able to attend those live readings, you just need to subscribe to the newsletter to get your free link. Then, 3 times a month with the members of the book club, we meet in a live discussion workshop via Zoom to discuss the chapters read over the week. This way, members can improve their speaking and critical thinking skills and be part of a beautiful community of book lovers, share their thoughts, and also decide on the next books to read. So for the next 2 months, we are going to read the original text of It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This book was published in 2016, and if you want to know more about the novel and Colleen Hoover's work, I invite you to listen to the podcast episode 29, an introduction to Colleen Hoover and It Ends With Us, in the podcast Read in English. This podcast is available on YouTube and also on Spotify. Today is our sixth live reading session, and we are going to read chapter 8 of the novel. And next Sunday, there is a change of plan in the schedule of the live readings, of the live workshop. For our third live workshop, it will happen next Sunday, not Saturday. So if you want to be part of this third live workshop, in which we are going to discuss chapters 8 to 11, then you just need to subscribe to the book club on lydiasbookclub.com. You have the link in the description of this video, and it will be the best way for you to improve your reading and speaking skills, ask questions, and also develop your reading skills. And it's going to be a great opportunity as well for you to meet the other members of the book club. Right, so let's get started. And as usual, I'm going to do a recap of chapter 7, the one that we read on Thursday. Yes, that's right. So, in this very steamy chapter, I don't know if you remember what happened. So in chapter 7, this is the chapter. Hey, thank you for joining. In this chapter, we are at Eliza's party, birthday party, and Lily has come with Devin or Divine. I would say Devin, a friend of her. He used to be her colleague at the marketing firm where she worked before, and they weren't very close. They're not very close actually, but it happened that he visited. He came over to Lily's shop, and he met Eliza, and Eliza, I guess, ex thought that they were friends, and she invited him. As you as you have noticed, Eliza is very friendly. She becomes friends with people in a second, um, which is actually something that we discussed at the book club in our live workshop discussion. The fact that we weren't quite um, um, well, we yeah, we are not quite not satisfied, but we it's not very believable that well, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, depends on your own culture, but it's hard to believe that she could become friends with Lily when she arrived at the shop, and um, in a couple after a couple of hours, they were like friends. So there's some parts of the book that they don't seem very realistic, especially around Eliza's character and the fact that she arrived very early on in the story. Yeah, so that's just our intake and how we actually agreed on that aspect of the story and the fact that that didn't seem very relatable in a way. Um, so Devin is Lily's old, well, former colleague at the marketing firm, and he agreed to come with her. She insisted. Well, in the end, Lily didn't want to go to that party on her own, so she insisted for him to come, and he did. Um, and in the back of her head, perhaps she maybe wanted to make Riles jealous in a way. So this guy is actually gay. So we learned that when they were in the elevator, and Devin actually say it out loud and asking Lily, so what's the plan? What's the who's the guy you want to make jealous? Yeah, do I need to make this guy jealous? And and she in the end agrees and play that role with him. Hi, AD man, thank you for joining the live. We are reading at the moment this book. It ends with us. We read this book in its original text, and I'm doing a quick recap on chapter 7, the chapter that we read uh, last uh, last Thursday. Did you read the book? Did you know a little bit about the story? Let me know. Um, so after that, so they arrive at the party and they're all dressed up, of course, very fancy clothes and stuff. Um, and she struggled to see Ryle. She can't see him in the crowd, and eventually but she when they arrive, they're greeted by Eliza, and at some point. Um, they finally meet, or oh yeah, Lily is looking at a painting, no, at a photo, and hello, no, I have no idea. Okay, so if you want to know more about the book, I did a podcast episode on YouTube or on Spotify. You can listen to it, and I introduced the book and also the author. Colleen Hoover. She's an American author, and she likes to write romance and dark romance, thrillers, romance kind of book, and also young adult books, and she's very popular. And I was curious to read her book and her writing style. And the book and the a film has so the book has been adapted on screen as a film, and the film came out last August. And I watched the film, and I really liked the topic of the story, and that's why it made me want to read the book to have more details and more insights around the character than what we have in a film. It's like a small, a condensed version of the book, so I wanted more. So that's why I proposed to read that book in the book club. So I hope that if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to answer you. You can find all the live readings that we've done so far on YouTube or Spotify. And I hope that you will like it. So, um, where was I? Yes, so Lily is looking at a painting, or it's not a picture on the wall of the apartment, and a photograph. Yeah, it's a photograph that's hanging on the wall. And she starts looking at it more closely, and I think it's at some point. Um, at some point, she realizes that it's a picture of her. The picture that it took of her when when they first met at the rooftop of the building. And the picture seems to be distorted and blurry. So at first she doesn't realize is that's her, but then when she takes the time to look at it, she realizes that it's her. It's that picture that he took of her. Um, yes, so the picture is blurred, so it was hard to make out at first, but I can recognize that hair from anywhere. That's my hair. It's hard to miss, along with the marine-grade polymer lounge chair I'm lying on. This is the picture he took on the rooftop the first night we met. So this is, in a way, very romantic, we could say. Um, but on the other hand, Ryle is acting very distant, um, and a bit like he's acting a little bit jealous in a jealous way because he doesn't know that the guy the day that she wrote is gay, and he said, and he feels a little bit jealous that that she brought this guy with her. And so the plan worked in a way. But then he realizes quickly that he has effect on her. And I think he finds out that the guy is gay, or he doesn't even, they don't, yeah, he doesn't even care. He just go to see her, and he starts talking to her when she's looking at the photograph and realizing that that's her. And and then he leaves. He leaves her and goes back up to the roof, I think. It just briefly talks to her and then um, playing a little bit and is acting as is close to her and then it pushes back and he leaves. So it's a bit hot and cold kind of attitude and she starts to become really angry about or to get tired of his behavior and she goes upstairs she goes up to the roof and to get some fresh air and they have a very and then he meets her there and they start having a very honest conversation. Well, she is being honest with him and telling him that, well, listen, it's what's going on with you. You are you saying things to me and then you don't want to be with me, but you come to my door and then you want to have sex with me and then you leave and then you fall asleep and then you leave in the morning and and now I realize that you have a photo of me that you put in as big in a big frame um, in your living room, and now you acting like you don't care almost, or is being very distant, and to that, he doesn't reply back, doesn't say anything. So she's like, okay, fine, I'm done. I'm done. So she go back to the party and she's about to go and leave the party when Ryle comes down and calls her name and grabs her and take her to the bedroom, to his bedroom, because they he lives with his sister in this huge flat. And and he takes her to the to his bedroom. They start kissing, and and there is the and very, as you can imagine, in if you've seen romance films and things like that, he's very um, passionate. The kisses are very passionate, and at some point, and we can see here in the writing a little bit of what's to come. I think that she gave some clues here. Personally, I feel like there are some clues here that kind of foreshadows what's going to happen. Um, and especially when we can read page 92. Despite the strength behind them, his lips are like silk. So Ryan is kissing Lily very passionately and with force. And so we can feel the aggressiveness of his behavior, but at the same time, it's all covered up with his beautiful this with this handsome man, very fit and well built and very charming and seductive and and we almost like it's a cover up uh, from his aggressiveness in a way, or his way to grab her as well, like if she was his thing, you know. So to me, this sentence is very evocative about the whole character of Ryle and foreshadows really what's to come because he's very handsome, very seductive, but on the other hand, he has this aggressivity and his this darkness as well in his character, and almost it's something that we can't reach about him. Um, and I like the fact that you've got this idea of silk, and but behind it, you've got that dark side and violence. So yeah, I just wanted to mention this quote. So Lily put herself together in a way and start after the very passionate kiss, she realizes that she doesn't want to have wait, yeah, she realizes, what is she saying, that um um yeah, so he's about to they're they're about to have more than just that to have sex and not just kissing, and she stops him. um it hit me that with the realization that his mouth was capable of a yeah, okay. Sorry. So she realizes that she doesn't want to go further with him, and she asked him to put her down because in his way of behaving, he wants to do more with her than just kissing, and she is ask him. She makes him accountable here. She's asking him to explain. She's asking explanation about his strange way to react with her, because she doesn't understand why at one point he is being very distant and saying that he doesn't want to have a relationship and doesn't want to see her anymore, and the next day he comes to see her and wants to and he says to her that he can't think about her, he can't stop thinking about her. So she asks him to not not have sex with her and just sleep together. And he accepts. He says, "All right, okay, we're just gonna sleep." And they sleep together through the night. And well, Lily stays the whole night. And when she wakes up in the morning, she meets Eliza in the kitchen, and and of course the conversation uh, quickly turns to the whole questioning about what's going on with my brother, and the fact that Eliza was really shocked that they were having but that there was something between the two of them, and and she is also here we have a little bit of clues about what's to come in the story because she warns her, she's being very reluctant her about Lily dating her brother. She's not very um happy about it. She doesn't like the idea of Lily dating her brother because he seems to not have behaved well with his former girlfriends, and she doesn't really trust her brother. So that tells something in a way. So that's about it. So let's start reading chapter 8. We need to talk, Lucy says. So Lucy, remember, is Lily's roommate that she doesn't really talk to. They're not very close. She's sitting on the couch, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Oh shit. I drop my purse and rush over to her. As soon as I sit down next to her, she starts crying. What's wrong? Did Alex break up with you? She starts shaking her head, and then I really start freaking out. Please, don't say cancer. I grab her hand, and that's when I see it. Lucy, you're engaged? She nods. I'm sorry. I know we'll still have 6 months left on the lease, but he wants me to move in with him. I stare at her for a minute. Is that why she's crying? Because she wants out of her because she wants out of her lease. She reaches for a tissue and starts dabbing at her eyes. I feel awful, Lily. You're going to be all alone. I'm moving and you won't have anyone. What the? Lucy, I'll be fine, I promise. She looks up at me with hope in her expression. Really? Why in the world did she have this impression of me? I nod again. Yes, I'm not mad. I'm happy for you. She throws her arms around me and hugs me. Oh, thank you, Lily. She starts giggling in between bouts of tears. When she releases me, she jumps up and says, I have to go tell Alex. Oh my God. I was so worried he was so worried you wouldn't let me out of my lease. She grabs her purse and shoes and disappears out of the door. I lie back on the couch and stare up at the ceiling. Did she just play with me? I start laughing because until this moment, I had no idea how much I've been waiting for this to happen. The whole place for myself. What's even better is when I do decide to have sex with Ryan, we can have it over here all the time and not have to worry about being quiet. The last time I spoke to Ryle was when I left his apartment on Saturday. We agreed on a trial run. No commitments yet. Just a relationship feeler, just a relationship feeler to see if it's something we both want. It's now Monday night, and I'm a little disappointed I haven't heard from him. I gave him my phone number before we parted Saturday, but I don't really know texting etiquette, especially for trial runs. Regardless, I'm not texting him first. I decide to occupy my time with teenage angst and Ellen DeGeneres instead. I'm not about to wait around to be beaconed by a guy. I'm not even having sex with him. with. I'm not even having sex with. But I don't know why I assume that reading about the first guy I had sex with will somehow get my mind off the guy I'm not having sex with. Oh gosh. Dear Ellen, my great grandfather's name is Ellis. My entire life I thought that was a really cool name for such an old guy. After he died, I was reading the obituary. Would you believe that Ellis wasn't even his real name? His real name was Levi Sampson, and I had no idea. I asked my grandmother where the name Ellis came from. She said his initials were LS, and everyone called him by his initials for so long. They just started sounding they just started sounding them out over they just started sounding them out over the years, which is why they referred to him as Ellis. I was looking at your name just now, and it made me think of that. Ellen, is that even your real name? You could be just like my great grandfather and using your initials as a disguise, LN. I'm on to you, Ellen. Speaking of names, do you think Atlas is a weird name? It is, isn't it? Yesterday, when I was watching your show with him, I asked him where he got his name from. He said he didn't know. Without even thinking, I told him he should ask his mother why she named him that. He just looked over at me for a second and said, "It's a little too late for that." I don't know what he meant by that. I don't know if his mom died or if she gave him up for adoption. We've been friends for a few weeks now, and I still don't really know anything about him or why he doesn't have a place to live. I would just ask him, but I'm not sure if he really trusts me yet. He seems to have trust issues, and I guess I can't blame him. I'm worried about him. I started getting really cold this week, and it's supposed to be even colder next week. If he doesn't have electricity, that means he doesn't have a heater. I hope he at least has blankets. Do you know how awful I would feel if he froze to death? Pretty freaking awful, Ellen. I find some blankets this week and give them to him. Lily. Dear Ellen, it's going to start snowing soon, so I decided to harvest my garden today. I had already pulled the radishes, so I just wanted to put some mulch and compost down, which wouldn't have taken me long, but Atlas insisted on helping. He asked me a lot of questions about gardening, and I liked that he seemed interested in my interests. I showed him how to lay the compost and mulch to cover the ground so that the snow wouldn't do too much damage. My garden, my garden is small compared to most gardens, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet, but it's all my dad will let me use of the garden. Atlas covered the whole thing while I sat cross-legged in the grass and watched him. I wasn't being lazy. He just took over and wanted to do it, so I let him. I can tell he's a hard worker. I wonder if maybe keeping himself busy takes his mind off of things. And that's why he always wants to help me so much. When he was finished, he walked over and dropped down next to me on the grass. What made you want to grow things? He asks. He asked. I glanced over at him, and he was sitting cross-legged, looking at me curiously. I realized in that moment that he is probably the best friend I've ever had, and we barely know anything about each other. I have friends at school, but they are never allowed to come over to my house for obvious reasons. My mother is always worried something might happen with my father, and word might get out about his temper. I also never really get to go to other people's houses, but I'm not sure why. Maybe my father doesn't want me staying over at friends' houses because I might witness how a good husband is supposed to treat his wife. Probably wants me to believe the way he treats my mother is normal. Atlas is the first friend I've ever had that's ever been inside that's ever been inside my house. He's also the first friend to know how much I like to garden. And now he's the first friend to ever ask me why I garden. I reached down and pulled at a weed and started tearing it into little pieces while I thought about his question. When I was 10, my mother got me a subscription to a website called Seeds Anonymous. I said, every month I would get an unmarked package of seeds in the mail with instructions on how to plant them and care for them. I wouldn't know what I was growing until it came up out of the ground. Every day after school, I'd run straight to the backyard to see the progress. It gave me something to look forward to. Growing things felt like a reward. I could feel Atlas staring at me when he asked, "A reward? For what?" I shrugged. "For loving my plants the right way. Plants reward you based on the amount of love you show them. If you're cruel to them or neglect them, they give you nothing. But if you care for them and love them the right way, they reward you with the gifts in the form of vegetables or fruits or flowers." I looked down at the weed I was tearing apart in my hands, and there was barely an inch left of it. I ward it up between my fingers and flicked it. I didn't want to look over at Atlas because I could still feel him staring. So instead, I just stared out over my mulch-covered garden. "We're just alike," he said. My eyes flicked to his. "Me and you?" He shook his head. "No, plants and humans. Plants need to be loved the right way in order to survive. So do humans. We rely on our parents for birth to love us enough to keep us alive. And if our parents show us the right way, the right kind of love, we turn out as better humans overall. But if we are neglected," his voice grew quiet, almost sad. He whipped his hands on his knees, trying to get some of the dirt off. "If we are neglected, we end up homeless and incapable of anything meaningful." His words made my heart feel like the mulch he had just laid out. I didn't even know what to say to that. Does he really think that about himself? He acted like he was about to get up, but before he did, I said his name. He sat back down in the grass. I pointed at the row of trees that lined the fence to the left of the yard. "You see that tree over there? In the middle of the row of trees was an oak tree that stood taller than all the rest of the trees." Atlas glanced over at it and dragged his eyes all the way up to the top of the tree. "It grew on its own," I said. "Most plants do need a lot of care to survive, but some things, like trees, are strong enough to do it by just relying on themselves and nobody else." I had no idea if he knew what I was trying to say without me coming out and saying it. But I just wanted him to know that I thought he was strong enough to survive whatever was going on in his life. I didn't know him well, but I could tell he was resilient, way more than I would ever be if I were in his situation. His eyes were glued to the tree. It was a long time before he even blinked. When he finally did, he just nodded a little and looked down at the grass. I thought with the way his mouth twitched that he was about to frown, but instead he actually smiled a little. Seeing that smile made my heart feel like I had just startled it right out of a dead sleep. "We're just alike," he said, repeating himself from earlier. "Plants and humans?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, me and you." I gasped. Ellen, I hope he didn't notice, but I definitely sucked in a rush of hair, in a rush of air, because what the heck was I supposed to say to that? I just sat there, really awkward and quiet, until he stood up. He turned like he was about to walk home. "Atlas, wait." He glanced back down at me. I pointed at his hand and said, "You might want to take a quick shower before you go back. Compost is made from cow manure." He lifted his hand and cow manure, yeah. Um, cow manure probably is the excrement of cow. Yeah, I don't know. Cow manure? Seriously? I grinned and nodded. He laughed a little, and then, before I knew it, he was on the ground next to me, whipping his hands all over me. We were both laughing as he reached the bag next to us and stuck his hand inside, then smeared it down my arms. "Ellen, I am confident that the next sentence I'm about to write has never been written or spoken aloud before." When he was whipping that cow shit on me, yeah, it's shit, cow shit, it was quite possibly the most turned on. It was quite possibly the most turned on I ever been. After a few minutes, we were both lying on the ground, breathing hard, still laughing. He finally stood up and pulled me to my feet, knowing he couldn't waste minutes if he wanted a shower before my parents came home. Once he was in the shower, I washed my hands in the sink and just stood there, wondering what he meant earlier when he said we were just alike. Was it a compliment? It sure felt like one. Was he saying that he thought I was strong too? Because I certainly didn't feel strong most of the time. In that moment, just thinking about him made me feel weak. I wondered what I was going to do about the way I was starting to feel when I was around him. I also wondered how long I can keep hiding him from my parents and how long he'll be staying at that house. Winters in Maine are unbearably cold, and he won't survive without a heater or blankets. I gathered myself and went in search of all the spare blankets I could find. I was going to give I was going to give them to him when he got out of the shower, but it was already 5 and he left in a hurry. I'll give them to him tomorrow. Lily. Dear Ellen, Harry Cornick Jr. is freaking hilarious. I'm not sure if you ever had him on your show because I hate to admit it. To admit, I have probably missed an episode or two since you've been on the air, but if you've never had him, you should. Actually, have you ever watched Late Night with Conan O'Brien? He has this guy named Andy who sits on the couch for every episode. I wish Harry could sit on your couch for every episode. He just has the best one-liners, and the two of you together would be epic. I just want to say thank you. I know that you don't have a show on TV for the sole purpose of making me laugh, but sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes my life just makes me feel like I've lost the ability to laugh or smile. But then I turn on your show, and no matter what, and no matter what mood I'm in, when I turn on the TV, I always feel better by the time your show is over. So yeah, thanks for that. I know you probably want an update on Atlas, and I'll give you one in a second. But first, I need to tell you about what happened yesterday. My mother is a teaching assistant over at Bremer Bremer Elementary or Brimer Elementary. It's a bit of a drive, and that's why she never gets home until around 5 o'clock. My dad works 2 miles. Oh, sorry. It's late. My dad keeps his car in the garage, and my mom keeps her car in the driveway. Well, yesterday, my mom got home a little bit early. Atlas was still at the house, and we were almost finished. And we were almost finished watching your show when I heard the garage door start to open. He ran out of the back door, and I rushed around the living room cleaning up our soda cans and snacks. It had started snowing really hard around lunchtime yesterday, and my mother had a lot of stuff to carry in. So she pulled up in the garage so she could bring it all in through the kitchen door. It was work stuff and few groceries. I was helping her bring everything inside when my dad pulled up in the driveway. Okay. He started honking. Honking is, the sound when you in your car when you are when you the bell, let's say, of the car honking is that. Um, it's like ringing in your car, basically. He started honking his horn because he was mad that my mum was parked in the garage. I guess he didn't want to have to get out of his car in the snow. That's the only thing I can think of that. That's the only thing I can think of that would make that I can think of that would make him want her to move her car right then and there, instead of just waiting until she was finished unloading it. Come to think of it, why does my father always get the garage? You would think a man wouldn't want the woman he loves to get the shittier parking spot. Anyway, my mother got that real scared look in her eye when he started honking, and she told me to take all her stuff to the table while she moved a car out. I'm not sure what happened when she went back outside. I heard a crash, and then I heard her scream. So I ran to the garage, thinking maybe she has slipped on ice. Ellen, I don't even want to describe what happened next. I'm still a little shocked by the whole thing. I opened the garage door and didn't see my mom. I just saw my dad behind the car doing something. I took a step closer and realized why I couldn't see my mom. He had her pushed down on the wood, on the hood with his hands around her throat. He was choking her, Ellen. I might cry just thinking about it. He was yelling at her, staring down at her with so much hatred. Something about not having respect for how hard he works. I don't know why he was mad, really, because all I could hear was her silence while she struggled to breathe. The next few minutes are a blur, but I know I started screaming at him. I jumped on his back and I was hitting him on the side of his head. And then I wasn't. I don't really know what happened, but I'm guessing he threw me off of him. I just remembered 1 second I was on his back, and the next second I was on the ground and my forehead hurt like you wouldn't believe. My mom was sitting next to me, holding my head and telling me she was sorry. I looked around for my dad, but he wasn't there. He'd gotten into his car and drove off after I hit my head. My mom gave me a rag and told me to hold it to my head because it was bleeding. And then she helped me to her car and drove me to the hospital. On the way there, she only said one thing to me. When they ask you what happened, tell them you slipped on the ice. Again, covering up for him. When she said that, I just looked out my window and started crying because I thought for sure this was the final because I thought for sure this was the final straw, that she would leave him now that he had hurt me. That was the moment I realized that she'd never leave him. I felt so defeated, but I was too scared to say anything to her about it. I had to get 9 stitches on my forehead. I'm still not sure what I hit my head on, but it doesn't really matter. The fact is, my father, for the reason I was hurt, the fact is, my father was the reason I was hurt, and he didn't even stay and check on me. He just left us both there on the floor of the garage and left. I got home really late last night and fell right to sleep because they had given me some kind of pain pill. This morning, when I walked to the bus, I tried not to look directly at Atlas so he wouldn't see my forehead. I had fixed my hair so that you couldn't really see it, and he didn't notice right away. When we sat down next to each other on the bus, our hands touched when we were putting our stuff on the floor. His hands were like ice, Ellen, ice. That's when I realized that I forgot to give him the blankets I had pulled out for him, the blankets I had pulled out for him yesterday because my mother got home sooner than I expected. The incident in the garage sort of took over all my thoughts, and I completely forgot about him. It had snowed and iced all night, and he had been over there at that house in the dark all by himself. And now he was so cold. I didn't know how he was even functioning. I grabbed both of his hands in mine and said, "Atlas, you're freezing." He didn't say anything. I just started rubbing his hands in mine to warm them up. I laid my head on his shoulder, and then I did the most embarrassing thing. I just started to cry. I don't cry very much, but I was still so upset by what happened yesterday. And then I was feeling so guilty that I forgot to take him blankets. And it all hit me right there on the ride to school. He didn't say anything. He just pulled his hands from mine so I'd stop rubbing them. And then he laid his hands on top of mine. We just sat there like that the whole ride to school, with our hands leaned together and his hands on top of mine. I might have thought that it was sweet if it wasn't so sad. On the ride home from school, is when he finally noticed my head. Honestly, I had forgotten about it. No one at school even asked me about it, And when he sat down next to me on the bus, I wasn't even trying to hide it with my hair. He looked right at me and said, "What happened to your head?" I didn't know what to say to him. I just touched it with my fingers and then looked out the window. I've been trying to get him to trust me more in hopes. He, to trust me more in hopes he would tell me why he doesn't have a place to live. So I didn't want to lie to him. I just didn't want to tell him the truth either. When the bus started moving, he said, "Yesterday, after I left your house, I heard something going on out over there. I heard yelling. I heard you scream, and then I saw your father leave. I was going to come check on you just to make sure everything was okay, but as I was walking over, I saw you leaving in the car with your mother." He must have heard the fight in the garage and saw her leaving to take me to get the stitches. I couldn't believe he came over to our house. Do you know what my dad would do to him if he saw him wearing his clothes? I got so worried for him because I don't think he knows what my father is capable of. I looked at him and said, "Atlas, you can't do that. You can't come to my house when my parents are home." Atlas got really quiet and then said, "I heard you scream, Lily." He said it like me being in danger trumped anything else. I felt bad because I know he was just trying to help, but that would have made things so much worse. So much worse. "I fell," I said to him. As soon as I said it, I felt bad for lying. And to be honest, he looked a little bit disappointed in me because I think we both knew in that moment that I wasn't as simple as a fall, that it was as simple as a fall. Then he pulled up the sleeve of his shirt and he held out his arm. Ellen, my stomach dropped. It was so bad. All over his arm, he had these small scars. Some of the scars looked just like someone had stuck a cigarette to his arm and held it there. He twisted his arm around so I could see that it was on the other side too. "I used to fall too, Lily." Then he pulled his shirt sleeve down and didn't say anything else. For a second, I wanted to tell him it wasn't like that my dad never hurts me, and that he wasn't just trying to get me off, that he was just trying to get me off of him. But then I realized I'd be using the same excuses my mom uses. I felt a little embarrassed that he knows what goes on at my house. I spent the whole rest of the bus ride looking out of the window because I didn't know what to say to him. When we got home, my mom's car was there, in the driveway, of course, at the garage. That meant Atlas couldn't come over and watch your show with me. I was going to tell him I would bring him blankets later, but when he got off the bus, he didn't even tell me bye. He just started walking down the street like he was mad. It's dark now, and I'm waiting on my parents to go to sleep. But in a little while, I'm going to take him some blankets. Lily. Okay. Dear Ellen, I'm in a way, okay. I'm in way over my head. Do you ever do things you know are wrong, but are somehow also right? I don't know how to put it in simpler terms than that. I mean, I'm only 15, and I certainly shouldn't have boys spending the night in my bedroom. But if a person knows someone needs a place to stay, isn't that person's responsibility as a human to help them? Last night, after my parents went to sleep, I snuck the back out the back door to take Atlas those blankets. I took a flashlight with oh sorry. Um, I took a flashlight with me because it was dark. It was still snowing really hard, so by the time I made it to that house, I was freezing. I beat on the back door, and as soon as he opened it, I pushed past him to get out of the cold. Only I didn't get out of the cold. Somehow it felt even colder inside that old house. I still had my flashlight on and shined it around the living room and kitchen. There wasn't, oops, sorry. There wasn't anything in there. There wasn't anything in there, Ellen. No couch, no chair, no mattress. I handed the blankets off to him and kept looking around me. There was a big hole in the roof over the kitchen, and wind and snow were just pouring in. When I shined my light around the living room, I saw his stuff in one of the corners, his backpack, plus the backpack I'd given him. There was a little pile of of all the stuff I'd given him, like some of my dad's clothes. And then there was two towels on the floor. One I guess he laid on and one covered up with. I put my hand over my mouth because I was so horrified. He'd been there, living like that, for weeks. Atlas put his hand on my back and tried to walk me back out the door. You shouldn't be over here. You shouldn't be over here, Lily, he said. You could get in trouble. That's when I grabbed his hand and said, you shouldn't be here either. I started to pull him out of the front door with me, but he yanked his hand back. He yanked his hand back. That's when I said, you can't sleep in my That's when I said, you can sleep on my floor tonight. I'll keep my bedroom door locked. You can't sleep here, Atlas. It's too cold, and you get pneumonia and die. He looked like he didn't know what to do. I'm sure he thought of being caught in my bedroom. I'm sure he thought the thought of being caught in my bedroom was just as scary as getting pneumonia and dying. He looked back at his spot in the living room, and then he just nodded his head once and said, "Okay, so you tell me, Ellen, was I wrong letting him sleep in my room last night? It doesn't feel wrong. It felt like the right thing to do. But I'm but I sure but I sure would get in a lot of trouble if we had been caught. He slept on the floor, so it's not like it was anything more than me just giving him somewhere warm to sleep." I did learn a little more about him last night, after I snuck him in the back door and to my room. I locked my door and made a pallet for him on the floor next to my bed. I set the alarm for 6 a.m. and told him he'd have to get up and leave before my parents woke up. Since sometimes my mom wakes me up in the mornings. I crawled in my bed and scooted over to the edge of it so I could look down at him while we talked for a little while. I asked him how long he thought he might stay there, and he said he didn't know. That's when I asked him how he ended up there. My lamp was still on, and we were whispering. But he got real quiet when I said that. I just stared up at He just stared up at me with his hands behind his head for a moment. Then he said, I don't know my real dad. He never had anything to do with me. It's always just been me and my mum. But she got remarried about 5 years ago to a guy who never really liked me much. We fought a lot. When I turned 18 a few months ago, we got in a big fight and he kicked me out of the house. He took a deep breath, like he didn't want to tell me anymore. But then he started talking again. I've been staying with a friend of mine and his family since then, but his dad got a transfer to Colorado and they moved. They couldn't take me with them, of course. His parents was just being nice by letting me stay with them, and I knew that. So I told them I talked to my mom that and that I was moving back home. The day they left, I didn't have anywhere to go. So I went back home and told my mom I'd like to move back in until I graduated. She wouldn't let me in. She wouldn't let me. Said it would upset my stepfather. He turned his head and looked at the wall. So I just wandered around for a few days until I saw that house. Figured I would just stay there until something better came along or until I graduated. I'm signed up to go to the Marines come May. To the Marines, to the Marine. Okay, sorry. I signed up to go to the Marines come May. So I'm just trying to hang on until then. May is 6 months away, Ellen. Oh yeah, so that's what she says in her diary. May is 6 months away, Ellen. 6. I had tears in my eyes when he finished telling me all that. I asked him why he didn't just ask someone if they could help him. He said he tried, but it's harder for an adult than a kid, and he's already 18. He said someone gave him a number for some shelters who might help him. There were 3 shelters in 20-mile radius of our town, but 2 of them were for battered women. The other one was a homeless shelter, but they only had a few beds and it was too far away for him to walk there if he wanted to go to school every day. Plus, you have to wait in a long line to try and get a bed. He said he tried it once, but he feels safer in that old house than he did at the shelter. Like the naive girl I am when it comes to a situation like his. I said, but aren't there other opinions? Can't you just tell the school counselor what your mum did? He shook his head and said he's too old for foster care. He's 18, so his mother can't get in trouble for not allowing him to go back home. He said he called about getting food stamps last week, but he didn't have a ride or money to get to his appointment. Not to mention he doesn't have a car, so he can't very well find a job. He said he's been looking though. After he leaves my house in the afternoons, he goes and applies at places, but he doesn't have an address or a phone number to put down on the applications, so that makes it harder for him. I swear, Ellen, every question I threw at him, he had an answer for. It's like he's tried everything not to be stuck in the situation he's in. But there isn't enough help out there for people like him. I got so mad at his whole situation. I told him he was crazy for wanting to go into the military, I wasn't so much whispering when I said, when the heck would you want to serve a country that has allowed you to end up in this kind of situation? You know what he said next? Ellen? You know what he said next, Ellen? His eyes grew sad and he said, it's not this country's fault, My mother doesn't give a shit about me. Then he reached up and turned off my lamp. Good night, Lily, he said. I didn't sleep much after that. I was too mad. I'm not even sure who I'm mad at. I just kept thinking about our country and the whole world and how screwed up it is that people don't do more for each other. I don't know when humans started only I don't know when humans started looking out for themselves. Maybe it's always been this way. It made me wonder how many people out there were just like Atlas. It made me wonder if there were other kids at our school who might be homeless. I go to school every day and internally complain about it most of the time, but I've never once thought that school might be the only home some kids have. It's the only place Atlas go. And now you have food. Oh, sorry. This is very emotional uh, um, passage because this is so true. Um, I work in a school, and this is a school where there are students who are learning a manual work, so it's a vocational school. And there are kids who are coming from different social background. It's very eclectic, and you have kids who are kind of neglected or are living in shelters or youth houses in a way, and or youth shelter. I'm not sure exactly about the word, and it's tough. And the school is often their second home or their only home. Um, and it's a place where it's warm. So for some, there is heat and yeah, and for some of them, uh, having and also this is a place that is warm where there is food, and some of them might eat that might lunch might be their only meal for the day, or the main meal, because they probably wouldn't have enough at breakfast or a dinner. So yeah, this is very realistic here, a real truth, whether it's in America or here in France and in every country. Um, and it's tough for those kids to then be able to focus on their education. And as you can imagine, this is probably not their priority of the day to do their homework or to focus on the lesson. Um, so it's tough. And you see that there are those kids are lost. And the school is the only place where they can get some frame or some kind of routine, and also don't think about their situation. It's also a place where they can make friends and laugh and play, and not think about when they're going to leave school. Well, when they will have to go home, well, or the place where they stay, or go back their home when there is no one or the parents are barely there. So yeah, it's a sad passage here, and a sad reality as well. Mm. I'll never be able to respect rich people now, knowing they willingly choose to spend their money on materialistic things rather than using it to help other people. No offense, Ellen. I know you're rich, but I guess I'm not referring to people like you. I've seen all the stuff you've done for others on your show and all the charities you support, but I know there are a lot of rich people out there who are selfish. Hell, they are even selfish. Hell, there are even selfish poor people and selfish middle class people. Look at my parents. We aren't rich. Sorry, we aren't rich, but we certainly aren't too poor to help other people. Yet I don't think my dad has ever done anything for a charity. I remember one time we were walking into a grocery store and an old man was ringing a bell for the Salvation Army. I asked my dad if we could give him some money, and he told me no, that he works hard for his money and he wasn't about to let me give it let me give it away. He said it isn't his fault that other people don't want to work. He spent the whole time he spent the whole time we were in the grocery store telling me about how people take advantage of the government, and until the government stops helping those people by giving them out handouts, the problem won't ever go away. Ellen, I believed him. That was 3 years ago, and all this time I thought homeless people were homeless because they were lazy or drug addicts or just didn't want to work like other people. But now I know that's not true. Sure, some of what he said was true to an extent, but he wasn't he was using the worst case scenarios. Not everyone is homeless because they choose to be. They're homeless because there isn't enough help to go around. And people like my father are the problem. Instead of helping others, people use the worst case scenarios to excuse their own selfishness and greed. I'll never be like that. I swear to you. When I grow up, I'm going to do everything I can to help other people. I'll be like you, Ellen. Just probably not as rich. Lily. Right. So this is the end of chapter 8. Um, and this chapter is very intense, very deep in topics such as homelessness and the question of um, the social the part that the government gives to social care and knowing the political situation in America right now, um, it makes me smile because it's a country that somehow is regressing, is going backwards, um, having voted for this man and his and all the people around him. Those the richest man in the world and those very and powerful people. Um, I wonder what's going to come next from that election. And and I really like the turn, the how the story, what this what takes uh what turn the story takes, and also here she takes a position. I mean, Colleen Hoover really he's spreading her message, or she's here reflecting on the political situation of social care and help for homeless people, and the vision, the perception of people that the people have on homeless people, and these assumptions that people have when it comes to homelessness or people seeking shelter. Um, so I guess it can make us all reflect on our own attitude and around the question of social care and help around homeless people, and especially this young man who is stuck in this situation and doesn't seem to see how his situation can get better other than just enrolling uh, for the Marine, um, which is actually a clever solution for him, and actually the only solution, the is only solution to survive. Um, and I guess a lot of people have done that or are doing this choice to enroll in the army because they know that they risk their lives, but they know that they will have a bed and food and money as well. Um, and it's nice to see that when Lily reacts, why would you help a country that doesn't help you? And very Atlas reacts in a very mature way and very discerning way because he doesn't mix up um, his mother's behavior and the country in itself, because at the end of the day, it's the fact that his mother has rejected him, and that's the reason why he is in this situation in the first hand. Um, but yeah, that raises also the issue of social care for young people and, and access to shelters. So yeah, it really shows the complexity of um, homelessness and also the struggle to find a place to stay, and how people end up in certain situations, like staying in abandoned places and squats or whatever. So yeah, I hope that you enjoy this live reading. Um, very This chapter was very emotional, and I really look forward to discuss this chapter in our in our next live discussion, which will be our third session next Sunday. And I hope that you will be able to join us as well to discuss that chapter in particular. And I like that the book raises these questions, and it gives a little bit of a break from the whole Ryle and Lily relationship, and and yeah, they're all this whole hot and cold thing, and yeah, it started to be a little bit too much at some point. I don't know. I felt a bit bored or just annoyed from their situation, or just um, or being a bit too much, I would say. So I like that passage. I like that she is approaching this side uh, of the characters, and that she is uh, touching on a different topic and more interesting topic, I would say. I mean, their relationship is nice, but then the Ryan Lily relationship is great, but it's just it's going into loop a little bit. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you feel about this chapter. I would love to read your comments. I always like to read what you think, and reply to you as well. Um, I wish you a beautiful rest of the day, and I will see you next Wednesday live for a new reading, live read along of the book. So next Wednesday, we will meet at 2 p.m. live on Instagram and on Zoom. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter to join the live reading for free. And we will read chapter 9 and 10 next Wednesday. So I really look forward to read the next chapters. Bye.